Here's another podcast from the Pod Bros Network.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Jean-Paul Van Damme Cast. It is Jeff and John in studio in beautiful Wyandotte, Michigan, and it's good to be back. It's been a couple weeks since we last posted something, and I truly apologize for that. I was in Boston last week, so we didn't have any chance to record before that. Things had been crazy and hectic, and we just hadn't had the time to even do our 6 degrees of stuff, so this time around, we are actually looking at a handful of Van Damme interviews. We're going to talk a little bit about what happened in each one of them, but also talk about like the typical Van Damme question and answer that usually goes on in a lot of these. I just picked basically what YouTube gave me from the top, and some of these I had seen before, some of them I hadn't. So he did one with Yahoo where he talks about basically getting into the movie business and his first beginning roles. He talks about Breakin', the dance film, and it's absolutely hilarious how he's like talking about the shuffle that he does. He goes, there was even more crazy dance scenes, but Cannon didn't like it because he was just trying to show off in front of the camera, so they cut him, which is very understandable. If I was the dude that was filming and I saw a dude in the background doing jumping splits, I would be flipping mad too. I'd be like, this guy ruined my shot. He also talks blood sport and something that I didn't know about it. He talks about begging for a role and then them throwing the script at him, being like, try this out. They didn't realize that they had a hit with Bloodsport on their hands. Originally, Cannon just basically put it out I think it was Cannon that put out Bloodsport.
I think so.
They only had it in a few select theaters in LA, but then it started doing really good money in those theaters. So Van Damme on his own took flyers and posted them everywhere.
Wow.
And they were starting to do the VHS copies, like starting to produce them. And then all of a sudden, whoever at Canon was just like, wait a minute. We got a hit on our hands. And they opened it up in more theaters and got more money. And that's basically what made Van Damme a household name. And then he talks about Kickboxer, where he kind of started to feel like a star going over to Thailand and whatnot. And just how different things were from that compared to even Bloodsport.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Double Impact, I didn't know this, comes from the Corsican Brothers, a novella by Alexandre Dumas.
Really?
Yeah, it was inspired by that.
Really?
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty funny because if you actually type that in, you're going to see Cheech and Chong on Google. I didn't know about that. His thoughts on Universal Soldier, they worked the people. That's one of my favorite like Hollywood meets wrestling things is when Dolph and Van Damme calls him up and is like, there's not a lot to press here. Let's act like we're going to get into a fight and get people talking. And it was the talk of the whole time.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, man, seriously. And he talked about Friends. The TV show Friends. He said he didn't know it. He didn't know Friends at all when he was asked to do it. And he was like, I feel embarrassed. And he talks about Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox. And he's like, oh, these beautiful young women, and they were just really nice. And he realized he was like, he didn't think until after how big of a hit the show was. And he was happy for it. He talked about Double Team too. He brought up Double Team.
Yes.
Mickey Rourke, he goes, one of the best actors that he's worked with or whatnot. He said on the set during the explosion where Mickey's walking away, they exploded a little bit too close to him, and he's like, it was too hot for everyone, but Mickey held his cool and just still kept walking.
Is that why his face is half melted now?
It is. It's because of that. Not because of plastic surgery.
Or boxing,
orbital bone breakage. The last, he talks about Expendables 2. He actually designed that last fight between him and Sly.
Really?
Yeah, it took 2 days, I guess, to film it. And so Van Damme didn't like it originally, and he was like, you have these great big forearms, let's, do more hand-to-hand combat. And so he worked with the fight choreographer, and Sly was actually like, all right, come up with something, man. He kind of called him on the spot, said, all right, come up with something.
That's
so
cool.
he did. And he
Sly has his pie, his finger in the directing pie too.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Yep. And so that was that. That Yahoo was a really good one. They broke it up in parts. So I just you go and see that. But I mean, you already listened to what we said, but there's more out there. He talks about meeting Sly for the first time as well, and how he missed out on sometimes, which is some funny stories too, because his first time he found out he was in America. He had the map to celebrities' houses, and it was like Sly's first wife went to take the dogs for a walk. So he and his buddy helps him, boost him up onto the fence, and the wife like turns around and sees it. So she calls the cops. And the cops come and he's like, oh, no. I just wanted to, say hi to Sly, and I'm, in karate, and, I just wanted to thank him for his movies and blah, blah, blah. And so the cops like let him go with a warning. He's like, they could see my innocent eyes, or what, started laughing. And then there was another situation where I guess it was a woman, but Van Damme didn't want to talk about it. He goes, it's embarrassing for me. And he laughed. So it looks like Sly got the girl, maybe.
Oh,
and then the third time was like they finally met with Expendables, which is crazy.
I thought I thought they knew each other through Planet Hollywood.
Planet Hollywood. I'm pretty sure they did.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah. The next one I watched, obviously Conan O'Brien loves JCVD. Just recently, I know, man. Just recently, Conan O'Brien had him on for, I think, We Die Young, and maybe The Bouncer as well.
Wow.
They did some fun stuff back and forth with each other. And but the one that everyone knows about, either the one where Van Damme does the reenacting of the dance scene in Kickboxer, and he beats up the guys on the Conan set. But there's also Conan asking him how he does the splits, and Van Damme helping him out. He's like, you have to have a relationship with your body. And he says... stretching is the start of putting muscle on your body. He's like, your tendons are like cable cords. He just goes into it, and everyone's kind of laughing. He's like, no, I'm serious. And then he puts Conan into this very provocative position, and Conan's like, oh, I didn't know my dream was going to become a reality. He like says this, and Van Damme's they're all laughing. He's like, keep your minds clean. But they had a really good back and forth. You have to watch those. The Conan Van Damme interviews are just great. They're treasures. The next one was Arsenio Hall back in the day with Universal Soldiers. He also talks to him about the movie that I'm totally mind blanking on, where he was with what's her face, the one with the I saw his penis. I'm blanking on everyone's name. Arquette, what's her first name? David's her first name. David Arquette. Yep. Was it Rosanna Arquette or Rosario Arquette or something? Or am I totally just making stuff up now?
Arquette's I know. It's Patricia Arquette.
Is it Patricia? It might be Patricia. Nowhere to Run.
Nowhere
to Run. That's the one. Rosanna Arquette. Yep. Because she hated working with him. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I mentioned and Kieran Culkin's in it. Macaulay Culkin's brother, the least famous brother. I don't know if he's the least famous.
How many brothers are there?
I think there's 3.
Who's the middle one?
You. Jeff Culkin. This was what it all led up to. I wanted to let you know. I did an ancestry
This is how you reveal it to me?
Yeah. It only took over 100 episodes, finally. But he's talking with Arsenio about that on the show too, but they don't have a name for it yet. And he talks about it's like a remake of Shane. I think we might have mentioned that even in the review of doing it, being like, kind of reminded me of Shane back in the day too. And the audience like kind of laughed at him about that. He's like, "What? You don't think I could do it?" He's kind of joking, laughing, and he's high on coke pretty much. Yeah. He's Van Damme. He's wearing a jean vest and nothing on underneath it.
Fantastic.
Oh, dude, it was. The women absolutely love him. They're going crazy in the crowd. This dude is just loving it, and I don't blame him. He's like, why'd you choose Van Damme? He's like, what's your original name? He's like, Van Varenberg. He's like, so what made you change it? He's like, Van Varenberg doesn't work, He's like, so he talks about the origin of it, and we all know the origin. And he goes, wham bam, thank you, Van Damme. And like the girls go crazy. Arsenio's laughing. I'm laughing. My toaster's laughing. And then he mentions something about like, because Arsenio calls him out on wearing just a vest. And he's like, it's time for men to go shirtless. It's time for men to show their bodies on the screen too. Women do it all the time. And the girls just erupt on that. If you just want to hear women screaming for like 10 minutes, because it's broken up in like part 1 and 2. This is the interview for you.
I love the sound of women screaming.
Oh yeah, man. Yep.
It's the only thing that lulls me to sleep.
Oh man, Van Damme does a hilarious thing too. He's like, "I'm catching a cold. Close up, cameraman, close up." But he's flexing his bicep when he's doing it, when he's coughing into his hand, and it's absolutely hilarious. And then he mentions the fake fight with Dolph again, and they show the Something Hard clip when they go into the gas station in the middle of the desert, and he's like, "Search for something hard." And his body's just jacked. Then we have the great Bloodsport interview with some cable television like Entertainment Tonight, and it's a 27-year-old Van Damme talking, and he's like, "Come on, you would train with me," and she's like, "Oh, okay," and she's like in a Murphy Brown business suit, and she's doing these sit-ups, these inclined sit-ups with him, and they're going back and forth talking about it. And then she's like, "What do you say to people who say you're the next Bruce Lee?" He's like, "Bruce Lee, I think Bruce Lee is Bruce Lee, and Jean-Claude Van Damme is Jean-Claude Van Damme." And then he starts sparring with Michelle Kesey, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't know about sparring with them." And then it ends with her being like, "All right, hold your two fingers up," and she hits his one hand and then bumps his fingers into his eyes, does the old Three Stooges skit, and he has fun with it. And it was a good back and forth on that, but it's also crazy and weird to see like Van Damme in what looks to us, if you're from our area, the Wally Ball old gym. So like at the Zodiac Club, where everything still looks like it's from the 1980s.
Great pizza though.
Oh, great pizza. Yeah, man. And the last one that I decided to review without making this a long ass episode was The Late Show with David Letterman. And they talk Time Cop. He talks about Belgium and how, it's kind of like similar to New York weather. And, David Letterman's also kind of letting the jokes fly about how he could get beat up by him and whatnot. But David Letterman beat him once in a fight at Antwerp, and Van Damme goes along with it. He's like, "You caught me that one time there," but, And then they're like, "We got to take a commercial break. We'll come back." They come back, and thank God for YouTube and people, because they cut the commercial out. But all of a sudden they come back and Van Damme's just dancing with a woman out in the crowd. He's just dancing with her. He's like, "Oh, that's my sister." It's absolutely hilarious because David Letterman's like, "What the fuck is going on?" And Van Damme comes back.
Of a lot of cocaine.
Oh
is what's
yeah,
going
seriously,
on.
man. And they do a skit with watermelon, and Letterman's like, "Can you show me how to break a watermelon?" He's like, "You break boards." And he's like, Yeah. He's like, "Can you do watermelon?" And Van Damme's like, you know how expensive the suit is?" He's like, "I love your show. I watch you every night. You're in a new suit every night." He goes, "But to me, I don't own too many suits. I can't, And so he's like, Letterman's like, all right, I'll break it. And so Letterman puts up the watermelon, and Van Damme starts laughing and pointing, goes, "He's got tape on it, it's pre-cut." Calls him out on it, ruins the skit. And then like David Letterman's like, "Shut up, man, shut up," like good sport about it.
Yeah.
And so Letterman busts through it, and it's totally empty on the inside, which is hilarious, And they're like, "Oh yeah, great." And that's the end of the interview.
Classic Letterman.
But, oh dude, it totally was. And absolutely had fun with it. Yeah, The Late Show is with David Letterman, right? It was The Late Show?
Yes.
Yeah, because Tonight Show was with Jay Leno.
Yep. And then Late Night was Conan O'Brien.
Yep. And now there's a million.
And now it's all trash.
Trash. So yeah, typically just in general too, some of the other interviews that we see with Van Damme is it depends on what Van Damme you get. Sometimes you get a really nice and happy Van Damme. He's done some podcasts. I didn't know he did Bruce Buffer's podcast a couple of years ago. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
He just recently did another podcast that wasn't Sean Pod Van Damme cast. I'm a little upset about that, but it is what it is.
Let it slide.
Yeah, this time. And sometimes though too, like he'll even admit it if he doesn't take his medicine or whatnot. You get a really shitty Van Damme interview. But I also understand him too, because if you watch just some of these interviews, everyone asks them the same questions. But it's a number one, it's a safety net, because coming from a podcaster interviewer myself, here's my experience, because I know what would make someone want to listen to our show that doesn't already listen. Oh, okay, well,
the same old questions, like, what are you working on now?
Yeah, right.
Ask him about his training regimen.
So for wrestling related wise, I got to interview Cowboy Bob Orton, and that interview went about as well as you think it would go. Which it wasn't bad, but it wasn't my best interview ever, in which I kind of faulted originally to, well, I have to ask him, what's your favorite match? Because that's probably the worst question to ask any wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like, okay, how do you get a guy to start talking if you don't know anything too much about him in his personal life? You just know about his career.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately I could tell the kind of person that he was. Is like, no way in shape or form was Cowboy Bob a jerk. He wasn't. He was just very Midwestern. He was very like kind of humble in that way. Kind of like, oh, I don't care, man. He's like, I loved all of them. I couldn't give a straight answer on that. Madison Square Garden, he was his favorite place to wrestle because obviously it's Madison Square Garden.
Mm-hmm.
That was like pretty much his answer. I haven't put up the interview yet, but check out podbros.com and you'll probably hear it soon. The Accidental Wrestling Fan. There's a plug. Patreon.com/podbros. We have a Jean Pod Van Dam cast tier over there. It only costs you $1 to get a super secret episode. Also, TeePublic, te.pub/lic/podbros. I figured might as well get that out of the way.
Hell
Didn't
yeah,
mean to
while
do
you're
that,
at
but
it.
that just happens. But yeah, so then I started asking Cowboy Bob a bunch of different questions that normally he wouldn't get, and it turned into a Midwestern conversation, and it turned into a generational conversation too, which then just,
You kids with your internet.
that's exactly how it went. And so I understand why people fall to the safety of safe questions, questions that aren't really thrilling. But I also can understand, depending on your mood, getting those questions. If you are constantly getting those questions, like, I mean, there's only so much a man can talk about without just being tired of it.
Yeah.
And so,
unless they're really full of themselves.
yeah,
and just-
exactly.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yep. And so you can see in some of his interviews, he just doesn't care.
Yeah, shuts down
sometimes-
emotionally.
Yeah, he does. We've seen it where I forget who was interviewing him, and it might have been for the Van Johnson stuff, but he was just kind of like, guys, he's like, I'm really tired, and you're asking the same questions, and, you're trying to bait me with stuff, and, so number one, I don't think a lot of people can handle talking about their past when they know that they've screwed up and they've had those regrets and whatnot. Some people can, and they use that as a platform to be like, hey, don't be like me, while others are just like, it was the past, let's leave it. And I think that kind of affects him sometimes, maybe depending on what mood he's in. Because I've seen those interviews where people are like, oh, yeah, remember when you used to be a huge cokehead? And he's just kind of like, thank you. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you don't want to bring up something that, that's hurt you and hurt your family and whatnot. But then we've also heard the other questions too, the boring stuff that comes out too. Oh, hey, Van Dam, let's talk about your old stuff and not the stuff that you're doing now. Or, let's not look at the past 20 years of film that you've done. We only want to talk about, the stuff that you did in the 80s and the early 90s. And I could see that being kind of bothersome too. You'd be like, wait, this was questions for We Die Young. And you guys are asking me about Time Cop, not We Die Young. You're just using this to, get your ratings boosted.
Yep.
So I completely understand in that sense. I think I would, I think, catch me in the wrong mood. I probably would do the same thing. I'll be completely honest. I'm usually a pretty down to earth guy, nice about stuff, but I'd be like, if we came here to discuss this and you're discussing this, I would probably be like, what's going on? Come on, guys. Let's turn this around. Let's get back into this.
I would do the splits and I would punch them in the dick and...
Oh, you want to talk about Bloodsport? Bah! But yeah, no. Overall, a lot of his interviews are fun. There's some like I think it was in Brazil. He's dancing with a girl and he gets a boner, and he has to stop himself. That's a pretty funny interview too. His interviews on French. I wish I spoke French or listened and understood French.
You should have told me. I speak fluent French.
Really?
No,
you speak Quebec French.
That's right.
Totally different. Totally different.
It's the only real French.
All Quebecers think the same thing. So, some of his stuff, hearing people talk about like his idea on politics in France is pretty funny, apparently.
Yeah.
Just because they're like, Van Dam, stop. It sounds kind of like a celebrity when you hear a celebrity preaching about politics.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Especially when you haven't
it.
lived in this country for, decades. And
Yeah, right. And then you're telling America how to act, and yet you're not fucking here. And then you try to always avoid paying taxes. And
that's really what being an American is all about, is avoiding paying taxes.
The new American dream. You're totally right, man. Having your Cayman Islands,
no
mailbox.
taxation without anything.
Yeah. Yep.
Just no taxation.
Is theft.
Thank you.
I don't travel on these roads, so why should I pay for it?
Exactly.
Yep. Now we're getting into libertarian cast.
Hell
so.
yeah. Let's we'll save that for the next
Kurt
Everyday
Russell.
Wrestling.
Oh man, yeah. No, we like to poke fun at everything, except what was it? Was it? No, it was Rage in the Cage when I poked fun at the state of Alabama and their government. So anyway, thank you all for listening so much. Honestly, I don't know where we're gonna go after this. I'll be completely honest. I mean, Jeff and I will discuss this off air, but
Suicide pact.
We already did that and it didn't work. We're still here.
Second time's a charm?
Dude, 200th time, really. After each episode that we do, it just doesn't work.
Doesn't take.
Huh. No, we'll talk about it. I know I've said it already before. It doesn't look like Van Damme has too much going on just in the world of 2019 for film. Maybe something will slip by. We'll see. I would love to get him on here, but I'm also afraid that we'll ask him the wrong questions. And
where do you get your ideas from?
Yeah, right.
That's
then
the question to ask.
He'll bring up Ukrainian billionaire oil guys.
Some Kazakhs too.
Yep. Yeah. And
getting drunk with a bunch of crazy Kazakh
yeah,
people
right.
of possible unscrupulous origin.
Giving them watches. Yeah. No, eating caviar and whatnot too.
Yes.
But yeah. God, that was a fun. Watch that reality TV show if you can.
Get your hands on it.
Seriously. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like we said, I think we said it on air. It feels like it's been forever since we've done an episode, even though it's only been 2 weeks. But we might try to do some episodes on some of his co-workers, his supporting cast that might not have as full of a library or might not warrant having their own special podcast for it, just because we're already riding the train on this one. And I don't know if I have another podcast in me outside of what we're already doing. So, because I do way too many. But
you mean not enough?
I know exactly.
We're only at like 50% capacity.
By the way, here's something for you. I didn't tell you this.
You quit?
When I was in, yeah, it's done. It's over. You're doing this all by yourself now. When I was in Boston at one of the dinners that I went to, they asked us to introduce ourselves and tell us like a fun secret about you type of thing. And
you told them where the bodies were?
Shh.
Oh, never mind.
I did mention that I said I have a podcast that's about Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it is rated in the top 10 in Sweden in film and television. And everyone lost their marbles on that. They thought it was great. They thought it was the best thing ever. And then they're like, what's the name of it? And I was like, Jean-Pod Van Damme Cast. And they absolutely lost it. And so people were like, we got to listen to this. And
Fantastic.
I was like,
Fantastic.
no, you don't need to listen.
You don't
to this.
have to.
I appreciate it, though. I was like, my podcasts aren't serious, but enjoy them.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening. We know all you Van Damme fans love it as well as we do. That about wraps things up. If you have any suggestions for us, let us know. Email us. jpvdamcast@gmail.com or thebros@podbros.com if you remember that one. We're also on Twitter @Damcast. If there's something that you want us to review that's in the realm that's 6 degrees of Van Damme, let us know. And we'll probably put it up in our queue. So that wraps it up. I am John.
And I am Jeff.
And you are listening to another episode of the Jean-Pod Van Damme Cast. Now, Jeff, get over here because I'm going to question your flexibility.
Not again.